In this video, I'm going to show you how I built a productized service to over $20,000 per month and show you the step-by-step process for building and scaling your own productized service. So without further ado, let's dive right on in and start off with what a productized service actually is. Now, while these are getting to be more popular, it's still not like a super widely known term, but I find the easiest way to explain it is to compare it to an agency, because agencies are all the rage right now. Everybody's talking about starting an agency. And so an agency is basically just a service-based business where people are paying you to provide a service to them. Now, a productized service basically takes that a step further, and what you're basically doing is systematizing that service into a highly scalable and repeatable process. And virtually any agency or service-based business can also be created as a productized service. It's just kind of a variation on the agency business model. So for example, my productized service was a podcast editing agency. So we would basically edit podcasts for a bunch of different podcasters. This included audio editing, video editing, production, social media content, etc. for podcasters. And so when you're looking at this business of podcast editing, you could either structure it as a podcast editing agency where maybe you are a super skilled podcast editor and you're editing, say, 20 different podcasts. You're putting a lot of time and effort into each of those, and so you're charging a pretty hefty rate. Or you could do what I did and create a productized service where instead of being hands-on, you delegate, you hire a team to provide a very repeatable and scalable product of edited podcasts without having to get your hands dirty yourself. And so even if you are a terrible audio editor like myself, you can still build a successful productized service without having to be an expert in the actual tactical skills. And by doing this, you're basically able to take advantage of some economies of scale because we were editing over 100 different podcasts at the time. And so we really honed in a very effective process that allowed us to be the lowest cost option on the market for getting your podcast edited, which really set us apart from all of our competition. So that's one way to compete as a productized service. You could go the low cost route, but there's plenty of other productized services that are high ticket and mid tier as well. So now that you get the gist of it, let's dive into the 5-step process for starting and scaling a productized service yourself. Step number 1 is going to be finding a problem. Now, the purpose of any business is really to solve a problem in the marketplace. Basically, you're offering something of value and you're receiving compensation in the process. Now, this value could be delivered by humans, it could be delivered by computers, or it could be delivered by a mixture of the two. So for example, with podcast editing, it was a largely human-driven process where we had a team of podcast editors that was delivering this service in a very consistent manner. Now, ideally here, you're picking a problem that you are pretty familiar with. This is because if you know the intricate details of the problem, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to create an effective solution to this problem that people actually want and will derive value from. If you just pick a random problem that you know nothing about, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to develop the best solution for that problem. And then on top of that, it's ideally a problem that's affecting a community that you are a part of or very close to. So at the time I was running a podcast myself, I was very familiar with the struggles of getting your podcast edited, how much it normally cost, all these other additional things that podcasters wanted, and what was really important to the clients. That allowed me to build this business a lot better than if I knew nothing about podcasting and was just coming in from ground zero with no context whatsoever. But diving out of podcasting for a second, here's a different example of maybe how you could identify a problem for your productized service. Let's say hypothetically you're a college student that procrastinates a lot and sucks at writing papers. Well, writing papers is a problem that you're pretty familiar with. And you also know many other students that have this same problem, which means you probably have a pretty good understanding of the problem. So in this instance, you could potentially create a productized service where you are providing papers to college students last minute with, say, 24-hour turnaround times, which leads us into step 2, which is creating a solution. So once you got the problem identified, now it's time to think about what a potential solution for that problem could be. And with any problem, there are a multitude of solutions, and each one is going to tailor towards a different kind of segment of the market, whether it's kind of the low ticket people that are just trying to get something done. You could have a high ticket solution, you could be somewhere in the middle. But in this instance, let's say you are shooting for college students that have a pretty low income. Well, in that case, you're going to want to create a pretty cheap solution. And so what do you need to do that? Well, in this case, really all you need is a good writer that is fast. And that's pretty much it. And in just a minute, we'll dive into how you can actually find this person very cheaply. So now that you know what you need to create this solution, it's time to flesh out a fulfillment process for how your end customer is actually going to get their problem solved. And with this, I find it is essential to just start small and test things very slowly as you eventually ramp things up. Because if you dive into too much too quickly, it's not going to go well. I've seen this many a time from myself and from others, so definitely want to start small here. So in this case, what I would do is I would hire a virtual assistant to start writing papers for you on a case-by-case basis. So instead of hiring somebody full-time, paying them a salary, all of that stuff, just find somebody virtually that you can pay for every paper that they write a fixed amount of money. Now, I've got a few videos on my channel that kind of detail my hiring process for VAs and how I've hired a couple dozen VAs over the last couple of years, which you can find right up here. But the short of it is that I recommend online jobs to pretty much anyone. I've helped my mom hire VAs off of here. I've helped a bunch of my friends hire VAs off of here. And I found it to be a very reliable platform for hiring really anything from video editors, graphic designers, writers, you name it. And I'll leave a link at the top of the description if you want to sign up and support the channel in the process. Now, once you find this person, you need to train them on the process of writing college papers, because it's unlikely that they have a vast amount of experience writing in this particular style. And so to train them, what I would do is I would pay them a flat rate per paper to write papers for you personally. So all the papers that you need to write for your classes, I would give all of those assignments to this virtual assistant and have them write those papers. Now, at first, they're probably not going to be worthy of actually submitting for grading, but the best way to train somebody on a task you want them to do is to give them real life examples of that task. Then once they've honed their skills a little bit writing papers for you, you could offer this service to some of your friends absolutely for free, where they just send you the requirements for their papers, you send those along to your virtual assistant, and they write those papers and you send them along to your friends. Now, in exchange for this, you could simply ask them for testimonials, where they record a quick video saying how great the service was and maybe how well they did in the class because of that last minute paper that you wrote for them. And then once you've done this a couple of times, you're consistently producing a good product and you have a few testimonials, it's time to move on to step number 3, which is to build a website. Because at this point, you have a consistent system that can produce value, but what you don't have is a consistent flow of customers. So the most important thing to have here is a website, because with a website, you don't have to individually explain to person after person what your service is and how it works. That can all just live on your website and you can just send prospective customers there. And better than that, your website can also help you fulfill on all of these requests so you don't have to be tying together. So now I'm going to quickly show you how to create a website that both explains what you do and helps you bring in a consistent flow of new customers, while also handling all of the back and forth communication and fulfillment of your service with absolutely no coding required. This is what I personally used to set up my website for my Productized service. And so essentially it's going to be broken down into the front end of your website and the back end of your website. And the front end of your website is just what prospective customers see when they look you up, they find your website, they're reading about you, they're watching your testimonials. That's the front end of your website, where you basically present the service to somebody who hasn't bought yet. Then the back end of your website is for customers. This is where they can view their orders, they can make additional purchases, they can communicate directly with you or your virtual assistant, they can receive their orders, and they can do everything on the back end of your website. So building the front end is going to be done on WordPress, and the easiest way to build a WordPress website is by using a service called Elementor Cloud. This is what I personally use to build all of my websites, and I've got a full video on this right up here, which you can check out, that'll walk you step by step through how to build a WordPress website on Elementor Cloud. Very simple process and the most affordable way to build a WordPress website. Then for the back end, you're going to use a platform called Service Provider Pro. This is the platform that I use to build the back end of my Productized service website, and I don't currently have any videos or tutorials on this, but if you would want one, definitely let me know in the comments below. But basically what Service Provider Pro, or SPP, does is it gives each customer a dashboard where they can see all of their orders, they can make additional orders, and they can manage everything from that one single dashboard. Because without a service like this, you're basically tying together PayPal, email, Google Drive, and like 18 other things to deliver a service to your end customer. It also looks professional and scales very well. So at our peak, we probably had around 15 or 20 different people within our SPP account in terms of employees that were all able to log in, see their own tasks, and complete everything themselves. This also allows you to streamline communication because you no longer have to be relaying information from your VA to your customer. Your VA has their account, the customer has their account, and they communicate through the platform. So now you have the fulfillment process locked down and you have a way to streamline attracting new customers. But the issue is nobody knows about your business. And this ties us into step number 4, which is to market your service. Now you pretty much have an unlimited number of options when it comes to getting people in the door, but two of my favorite are going to be referrals and SEO, or search engine optimization. Now in my experience, setting up a referral program for your Productized service is an absolute must. Once you have happy customers, they want to tell their friends about it, and if you're giving them some kind of kickback for doing so, they're going to be a lot more likely to actually go ahead and do it and just rave about it even more to their friends and other people people that might benefit from this service. This is what I personally did and was a huge growth driver for my particular productized service, and the whole referral program can be managed super easily within SPP, that software that I mentioned earlier. So maybe for our college student paper writing example, you could give people one free paper for every friend that they refer. Or you could even have a tier system where one referral gets you one paper. If you get 3 referrals, maybe you get $50 in credit on the site. You get 5 referrals, you give them $100 cash. You can really come up with whatever kind of referral program makes the most sense for you and provides things that your target market actually values. And like I said, this is one of the major growth channels that I use to scale my own productized service. Now, the next one to touch on is SEO. And this is also a great way to bring in new prospective customers. The whole premise here is to create content that your ideal customer is looking for. So in the writing papers example, maybe you could write some articles along the line of how to write a paper the night before, or like 5 tips for writing a paper in 24 hours, or just other pieces of content that people who could benefit from your service would be looking for. Then within those pieces of content, you're including calls to action for people to look more into your service and consider trying it out themselves. And the whole premise here in a nutshell is to look for questions that people are asking on the internet that lack a very good answer, and then providing the best resource possible to assist those people. Now, there's a whole lot more to SEO than that, but for the purposes of this video, that's where I would start off. Which brings us into the final step of the process, step number 5, which is to scale your team. Now, as your productized service begins to grow and gather more users, you're going to need to hire more virtual assistants and more people to facilitate this process. And I've got plenty of other videos on the channel that'll go into more detail on those things. But if your existing virtual assistant is doing good work, it's probably a good time to bump their pay and get them on a monthly salary if you can afford to. I would say though that it's very important to start small and only hire when you absolutely need to, because I've gotten burned many a time by hiring people too quickly before I was actually ready for them. But with this process and those tools in the description below, including Elementor, Service Provider Pro, and Online Jobs, you pretty much have everything that you need to build and scale a productized service yourself. And that is the exact playbook that I followed to scale my productized service well beyond $20,000 per month. So feel free to comment below with any questions that you've got, and I'll see you in the next video.